Do you guys remember 2020, the year of our Lord?
Now to growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S. Here's what we know. A Washington state resident fell ill after returning from Wuhan, China.
New York, California, Illinois, and Connecticut all ordering non-essential employees to stay home. New York's governor today telling non-essential businesses in his state to reduce their workforce to zero.
That was such a fun and relaxing
9901 emergency. We got individuals breaching the gate at the 3rd precinct.
blissful part of our lives. It definitely didn't have an everlasting effect on my worldview or my ability to socialize like a normal human being. Honestly though, looking back at 2020 and the pandemic as a whole, I think something that is oftentimes forgotten in the memory of the pandemic is its power in radicalizing the American working class. I, for one, was introduced to leftism and socialism as a whole solely due to events that took place during the pandemic. And this channel, North Star Radio, from its inception, was inspired by things I've learned since the beginning of the pandemic.
During his time in office, Henry Kissinger oversaw a massive expansion of the war in Vietnam and the secret bombings of Laos and Cambodia, where as many as 150,000 civilians were killed in the U.S. strikes. As Kissinger told the military, quote, "anything that flies or anything that moves."
The thing about growing up in America, and the reason so many American leftists have a distinct memory of a radicalizing moment, is because our entire school curriculum is basically a fabrication. We're basically fed lies about the world our entire childhood, until one day you learn something that causes you to realize everything you know is a lie. Becoming a leftist is never caused by the things we're taught in school, but rather it's caused by a realization that everything you're taught in school is a lie. And from that realization, your mind is able to open up and accept new understandings of things you already thought you understood. And then a snowball effect occurs, where each and every discovery causes more doubt in our current system, until one day you become a full-on tanky, dressed in all black, ready to bomb a— Nah, I'm just kidding. Or am I? I grew up in a liberal household. My parents voted for Barack Obama both times, and I was always taught to love my neighbor, recognize racial inequality, respect people's sexual identity, like when Obama legalized gay marriage in 2015. Or 3 months after he legalized gay marriage, he decided to airstrike a Doctors Without Borders hospital in Afghanistan. We don't talk about that. Suffice to say, I grew up in a loving household where I was taught to love all people. But thanks to the faults of liberalism, I was quite sheltered to the things that were happening around the globe to much less fortunate people. Speaking of liberalism, I fell down the alt-right pipeline.
Alt-right pipeline.
The alt-right pipeline.
The alt-right pipeline that sucks vulnerable white teenage boys in, makes them angry at the world, makes them blame all their problems on minorities and shit.
And the whole point of the alt-right pipeline and the pyramid of violence is that folks become desensitized and begin to dehumanize other people gradually over a prolonged period of time. And this seeps out as a cultural phenomenon. And it changes our culture, and it makes bigotry and racism more acceptable in our culture. People don't fall down the rabbit hole suddenly. They tend to sink in slowly, and the more they're surrounded by other bigoted people and people with prejudiced ideas, the more rapidly that descent will go, individually and as a society.
Looking back, that was obviously an incredibly embarrassing part of my life. However, it was also a very powerful and important piece of the puzzle to my story. And I don't think I'm alone in that. To briefly explain the phenomenon, it basically all begins with the dreaded Social Justice Warrior owned compilation.
Do you think men and women can work in the workplace together?
I don't know.
Without sexual harassment?
We'll see.
We'll see. How many years will it take for men and women working in the workplace together?
More than 40.
To get a sense.
We don't know what the rules are. Like, what? Here's a rule.
Don't
How about
you-
no makeup in the workplace?
Why would that be a rule?
Why should you wear makeup in the workplace? Isn't that sexually provocative?
No.
It's not?
No.
Well, what is it then? What's the purpose of makeup?
Some people would like to just put on makeup.
Why?
I don't know why.
Why do
people
you make
put
your
on-
lips red? Because they turn red during sexual arousal. That's why.
After one too many, you're being recommended videos of a similar genre. However, they're filled with a lot more bigotry and hatred. Hatred that is hidden behind a cloak of intellectual thinking.
How can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't... You know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me...
I hate to call him out, but I think Ethan Klein was the beginning of my descent into the alt-right pipeline. He made a lot of this sort of social justice warrior-owned type content where he like made fun of social justice warriors. He eventually acknowledged this and made an honest effort to cut ties from that part of the internet space. Up until now, where he seems to have courted a large leftist community, all thanks to his partnership with Hassan Piker.
This is to help people like you, Hassan.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are all domestic terrorists.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, of course, because we're not talking about Jews at all. We're talking about Israel.
I'm deciding for myself to not do that show anymore. Me and Hassan are still friends, and this has nothing to do with Hassan, anything he's done.
Eventually garnering an audience too far left for his own liking. By the time I graduated high school, I was a full-on Bernie bro. Beyond Bernie Sanders, I was really attracted to Andrew Yang at the time. I now understand that he's just some tech bro that has weird band-aid solutions to capitalism. But at the time, I was really intrigued by his optimism and his futuristic solutions to a lot of American issues. These political figures really shaped my worldview at the time, and they made me think that I knew everything I needed to know about American politics and the entire world. However, as the pandemic rapidly approached, causing my life as well as everyone else's to turn upside down, I soon realized how much of the world I completely misunderstood.
This is how people are actually feeling. Yeah, how I feel about it? This is the way about it going? No. But is everyone perfect? No. What I'm trying to say is, everyone feel like that. Everybody feel like that.
On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was murdered by Derek Chauvin, along with the assistance from 3 other Minneapolis police officers at the intersection of Chicago and East 38th in South Minneapolis. And on the following day, protests sprung up around Minneapolis. While peaceful at first, the Minneapolis Police Department assisted in the escalation of the protests, causing them to turn into violent riots. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I live in Minneapolis. I've always lived here. I was born here. And I'm obsessed with Minneapolis. I love it. I have no intention of leaving. So when I saw parts of my city being destroyed, being set on fire, being looted, it was a hard thing to see. And I was really confused. I had a bit of an existential crisis at the time, because the people causing the destruction, they were my people. I agreed with Black Lives Matter. I supported Black Lives Matter. I was 100% against the counter-protests. I was supposed to support this. But when I saw people I supported doing acts that I could not, in all honesty, support, I didn't know what to do. And a lot of my friends agreed with my perspective, which wasn't helpful at all, because I wanted to learn what could bring someone to do such acts, but I just wasn't able to at that time. I have a really distinct memory of tossing a disc with my friend just days after the riots had begun. And I was talking to him about how I support the cause, I support the movement, but when I see a protest turn into a violent protest or into a riot, I just couldn't support that. And in response, I kid you not, my friend said, yeah, all lives matter, not just black lives. And in that moment, I had like another existential crisis, because my friend, who I'm not friends with anymore, agreed with my view that the protests being violent is not a good thing. But he also went a step further and said that all lives matter. And I was like, is this the person I'm agreeing with? This is the side I'm on? I don't want to be on this side. I sort of realized in that moment that if I'm going to speak out against the violent protests, I'm on the wrong side. I'm sharing the perspective with people I don't like, people I do not want to agree with. So although I misunderstood how people could come to cause so much destruction in their own neighborhood, I realized I had to open my mind and hear other perspectives and try to change my own, because I knew it was incorrect. I knew I needed to shift my perspective to the proper direction. Funny enough, one of the online figures that was key in me changing my perspective about the riots is someone who is now banned off of YouTube because they moved to the alt-right and became like a Andrew Tate wannabe. And his name is Sneeko. Now at the time, he wasn't like that at all, but rather I would consider him like a leftist, or not a leftist, but at least a progressive. He lived in New York City at the time, and as the protests went on, he made a lot of videos of himself participating in the protests, as well as encouraging his audience to do the same. And it's kind of crazy to admit to this now, but I actually did have a great amount of respect for Sneeko. I really looked up to him because he made these really good videos that made me feel heard, like before he went to the alt-right. So to see him on the streets participating in these protests, as well as encouraging his audience to do the same, it was a very powerful thing for me to see. To see him do that, I'm like, okay, I guess it is a good thing. I'm gonna listen to this guy. And I did, and he actually really changed my perspective about the whole thing. It's crazy to look back on it now because dude's just off the deep end at this point. But I was still kind of confused. I still needed to learn more. As the pandemic went on, as far-right movements grew in America, as people were struggling to make ends meet due to very little support from the American government, I grew more and more interested in politics. And later that summer, after the riots had subsided, the H3 podcast uploaded a new video, an interview with Hassan Piker.
I have to say, Hassan, first of all, thank you for joining us. Very glad to have you with us.
The video was great, not only in introducing me to Hassan Piker, but as well as introducing me to the concept of anti-capitalism entirely. Because one thing really stuck out to me in this interview, and it happened almost immediately. There was one thing that Hassan Piker said that completely changed my life and redirected me to an entirely new direction. In the very first minute of the interview, Hassan called himself a leftist, something distinctly different from a liberal.
Do you use the word liberal? I'm not even sure how to describe it. But like left-leaning.
Yeah, I wouldn't even consider. I don't consider myself a liberal, but in the American political lexicon, I guess like I'm super liberal. That's what they. That's what Americans think liberalism is. Like the more left you are, the more liberal you are. Even though there is a genuine distinction between a leftist and a liberal, but yeah, I'm progressive. I guess that's the catch-all term.
I like progressive.
Yeah. Who wouldn't want to be progressive? It's in the name.
I'd never heard this word before, but it made complete sense to me. Because before politics, the thing I was most passionate about and thought about the most in my day-to-day was humanity. Human existence and human consciousness and our relationship to nature. So when I realized there was something beyond capitalism, the thing I had learned my entire life to be the only true system, I fully accepted anti-capitalism. Because thanks to my obsession with the human consciousness and our relationship to nature and the world around us, I realized that capitalism is inherently working against humanity. It is a system that entirely goes against my already held humanistic beliefs about the world. From that day on, I was forever hooked, forever in need of more information, because I knew that my current understanding of the world was completely inaccurate. I needed to learn more. Hassan Piker really helped me understand domestic issues and our political environment here in the United States. He was well versed in articulating the flaws of our system and how a socialistic system would look and operate. That was all fine and well. I was learning more and more about American politics and the need for a mass socialist movement, but I needed to learn more. I didn't consider myself a communist until I learned about dialectical materialism. This is the idea that thoughts and events are caused by the material condition of a person, not their identity, like religion or ethnicity. And then those events or ideas caused by the material condition then go on to affect people's material condition.
Dialectical materialism is a philosophical framework that combines the principles of dialectics and materialism. It posits that reality is shaped through the interaction of opposing forces, known as dialectics, and that the material world is the foundation of all phenomena. Dialectical materialism asserts that social, political, and historical developments arise from the contradictions and conflicts inherent in the material conditions of society.
I'm no professor. I still don't really know how to completely define it, but it's quite simple, really. Oh, there's a terrorist group over there? Yeah, they didn't become terrorists for no reason. Something had to happen in their material condition in order to cause them to become the terrorists. It's pretty simple. The person who introduced me to dialectical materialism, and the person who really just opened up my mind entirely to American imperialism, is Eddie Liger of Midwestern Marx. Something Eddie did differently than Hassan Piker was that he really focused on American military intervention around the globe. I've always been really interested in geography and like maps and things, so learning about American imperialism really piqued my interest. Eddie talked about countries like Venezuela or Cuba or DPRK, North Korea. These are countries that all Americans think they know everything about because we've been taught to despise these countries.
North Korea is also responsible for that state of constant warfare. North Korea does illegal nuclear weapons tests and threatens their neighbors constantly.
So your actual beef is that they threaten South Korea. South Korea, the country with millions of dollars in funding from the U.S., who constantly keep a supply of troops at the 38th parallel, including U.S. soldiers who are stationed in Korea. So the U.S. has their troops over there, and the DPRK doesn't have their troops over here, but they're the aggressors? Okay, Vosh. I'm not sure how you can call North Korea the aggressors in this situation because they've made threats when the U.S. backed the far-right Singham Rhee dictatorship who murdered millions during the Korean War, including filling the city of Pyongyang with bodies as the U.S. bombed every single building over 2 stories tall. And after failing to get the DPRK to bend to their will, the U.S. went to the UN and manufactured a voting plan to divide the country in half. And on that divide, the U.S. and their far-right allies in South Korea have kept troops ever since, while also keeping the DPRK under an embargo so they can't trade, holding their country in poverty. Are the DPRK really threatening their neighbors here? Or are they saying, please leave us alone and give us national sovereignty?
So when Eddie was successful in changing my perspective entirely and show me that the things I was taught were completely false, it made me realize on a broader level that a lot of the things I knew, a lot of the things my friends and family knew were probably also not true. I was able to realize that the American military-industrial complex, the American capitalist hegemony, is the utmost evil in this world. Not some terrorist group that we propped up for our own gain, not some third world country that we're taught to despise for absolutely no reason, but rather our own leadership here in America, our own system that we benefit from, is the problem. We are the global evil. We are the terrorists. Thank you for watching this video and supporting my channel. I hope that someday I'm able to play a key role in someone's journey to radicalization. Peace and love, and free Palestine. I may have gotten COVID in 2023, but I didn't get COVID before the death of Henry Kissinger. that dude. Rot in hell. Peace and love. If you'd like to support my channel further, I recently opened up memberships on my channel. I've already gotten one member, thank you very much, to Gehrman First Hunter. Once I start getting a few more members, I'm thinking of opening up a Discord and making some member exclusive content, so look forward to that.